All right, everybody, hello and welcome to the Week 16 video here on the Rob the Barber Show for the NFL picks. But this week, again, we're not doing a pick-centric video. That will be, once again, down in the ticker. We went 12-4 last week. The current record will be in that ticker as the video goes on, but it is very favorable at this point because we've had a couple of good weeks in a row. Week 16. We're almost at the end of the season. Things are starting to wind down. We did Coach of the Year last year. We're actually going to do fantasy football surprises of the year. People thought this guy might be good, and then he just exploded. Or guys like you've never heard of before, and they ended up being top 10 in their position. This video is just going to be a little bit of fun celebrating the end of the year and celebrating those who either got lucky, did their homework, a little bit of both. I mean, fantasy football is mostly about getting lucky anyway. It's all stuff we can't super control. But we're going to start with probably the biggest, whoa, there is. I think everybody knew he was going to be good, but Lamar Jackson, the number one quarterback in ESPN standard leagues this year. The dude is absolutely insane. So in my notes down here, I have it written down that at this present time, he has 2,889 yards, 33 touchdowns, which is leading the league, by the way, and 6 interceptions. That's a 27.6 point average for a quarterback. You know, when I'm drafting, I always do quarterback last because I'm like, they usually average really low. Lamar Jackson's out here averaging more than most of the people in the league right now. Just absolutely insane. His running makes him such a threat for fantasy and for real NFL offenses. So for those of you who drafted Lamar Jackson, congratulations. And we're going to keep it rolling with quarterbacks, specifically quarterbacks who wear purple, because our second fantasy surprise of the year is Kirk Cousins. So at this present moment, week 16, going into week 16, Kirk Cousins has 3,481 yards, 25 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions. I don't think anybody thought Kirk Cousins was going to be a viable starting quarterback. But according to my notes here, he has a 17-point average. 17 points per game from Kirk Cousins. Sure, it's 12 points less a game than Lamar Jackson, but I don't think anybody who drafted Kirk Cousins assumed he would even be your starter. A lot of people either didn't draft him or drafted him to be a backup. So to have him be one of the top guys at his position, like reliable people at his position, he had a lot of games back to back where he really backed it up and made it so, oh, should I start Phillip Rivers or Kirk Cousins? Well, the easy answer is Kirk Cousins, especially now. I'm really happy for Kirk Cousins because he seems to have finally found a niche in this Vikings offense, and people are kind of sleeping on them as a team. But from a fantasy perspective, it's great because a lot of people were able to find a waiver wire quarterback who ended up being able to start for them. And for some people, possibly started in the playoffs as well. So great job for all of you who drafted Kirk Cousins. And we're going to go on ahead and move into running backs now. I'm going to take Aaron Jones of the Green Bay Packers. Now, this isn't as much of a surprise to me, knowing Matt LaFleur came from Tennessee and that huge resurgence that Derrick Henry had last season at the end of the year. And even I have a couple friends that are Green Bay fans, and we've talked about this, like, oh, I need to get Aaron Jones this year because he's going to be insane. But I don't think that was a very national consensus kind of thing. So let me give you Aaron Jones' stats so far this year. So Aaron Jones is averaging 19.3 points a game, which is insane. 830 rushing yards, 14 touchdowns. And then he is adding 425 receiving yards and 3 touchdowns to that as well. He's kind of the engine that makes the Packers offense go. They kind of run through him and Jamal Williams a little bit, but mainly through Aaron Jones. Aaron Rodgers has a safety blanket in this guy. He's almost the new Randall Cobb for him, so he's getting a lot of receptions, and on top of that, they're just giving him the ball a lot. He might not be the bigger guy, Jamal Williams, who I consider him to be like the receiving back, but Aaron Jones has been the first and second down guy, and sometimes even third down guy. I mean, watch that Kansas City game. He went all over Kansas City, didn't he? So I'm really happy for Aaron Jones. Congrats to those who drafted Aaron Jones. And I actually think it's an odd case where I think this will carry over into future seasons. A lot of times we see a boom season and injuries happen or some other things happen and it doesn't get replicated. But Aaron Jones is actually a guy I see in the future, especially if you're in a keeper league and you got Aaron Jones, feel good about yourself. And I'm going to move right on along into, again, another running back that wears a shade of green. This is Leonard Fournette of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Leonard Fournette, going into the season, I saw a lot of really negative press around this guy because he hadn't had great seasons really since his rookie year. He was kind of not putting in 100%. You can kind of tell as well. So going into the season with Nick Foles, he has an okay game in week 1, and then Nick Foles goes down. And no one really knows what's going on with the Jaguars offense. No one knows what's going on at all just with the Jaguars in general. And all Leonard Fournette does along the way, albeit 2 bad weeks in the last 2 weeks, but these numbers account for that. Leonard Fournette is the 7th overall running back in ESPN standard leagues with 1,081 rushing yards, only 3 touchdowns, and 488 receiving yards with no touchdowns. That is 17.6 points average per game with only 3 touchdowns and with an inept offense. But Gardner Minshew actually helped Leonard Fournette a lot because it gave him receiving targets, it gave him running lanes to go through because Minshew was just chucking the ball deep so much. I'm really surprised that Leonard Fournette had the season he did. A lot of people just kind of took flyers on him, especially those in deeper leagues, because they had to, because there were no running backs available. And they were greeted with a very pleasant surprise with Fournette almost returning to form, but not exactly. This is not as good as his rookie year, but 7th overall for running backs. In a year that was kind of plagued by injury, it's almost as if Fournette's availability is what made him so valuable. But he's still a top 10 back. So for those of you who got him late, because I know some of you did, congratulations to you. This is one I'm not seeing as a continuation into the future, though. I don't think Fournette's going to have this kind of year next year. So keeper leagues might want to look at trading him. And I'm actually going to stay in the AFC South and actually stay on the Jaguars because DJ Chark Jr. is my next player. Let's look at his stats. 956 yards and 8 touchdowns going back and forth with Nick Foles and Gardner Minshew. I think he had like a 50-yard touchdown on the play Foles got hurt on in week 1. He had a 50-yard touchdown. Just, the kid exploded out of nowhere. I remember watching that game and just going, who is this kid? I have no idea who this is. He ends up being a nice waiver wire target for a lot of people. And again, someone that you could start going into the ends of your season and very important games down the stretch. It's really fun with receivers and running backs because you get these no-name guys that are like, who the heck is this guy? I don't even know who this is. It just happens from time to time, much like DJ Moore of the Carolina Panthers, who averages 16.4 points a game, 1,174 yards and 4 that might be a 9. I think it's a 4. And 4 touchdowns on an offense that features Christian McCaffrey so much. I mean, the dude's still averaging 16.4 points a game. And get this, DJ Moore, as a wide receiver in ESPN standard leagues, is ahead of Keenan Allen, Amari Cooper, and Jarvis Landry, who are people that most people were probably drafting really high before even considering a guy like DJ Moore on the Panthers. So for those of you drafted next year, the team doesn't always dictate how well you will do. DJ Moore has Greg Olsen and Christian McCaffrey on his team, but still produces. You just have to look through the cracks like that sometimes. Kind of like our third wide receiver here. In my opinion, this guy is probably the biggest, like, whoa, where did this guy come from? Unless you were paying attention. Chris Godwin of the Tampa Bay Bucks, 19.7 point average as a wide receiver 2, because Mike Evans is on the other side of him. 1,333 yards and 9 touchdowns. A lot of people got this dude in the mid-round, 7th, 8th round, and he's the number 2 wide receiver behind Michael Thomas. You got a bargain if you got this guy. Now, he's going to be unavailable in a lot of people's finals here in Week 16, so it was a great run for Godwin. I see this success sustaining because him being able to play alongside Mike Evans opens up a ton of space for him. The guy doesn't drop the ball. He runs really hard and strong. He's dealing with the hamstring issue, but he actually runs really smart as well. I'm excited to see what he does going forward with this offense, especially if Mike Evans is hampered going into next season. He shouldn't be, and neither should Godwin, but fantasy owners, you can't go wrong with Bruce Arians wide receivers. Let's just end it at that. And we're going to focus on some tight ends at this time. Now, I'm going to start with Darren Waller of the Oakland Raiders, who is another kind of waiver wire guy who burst on late and no one really knew who he was. I know some people like Matthew Berry and Fabiano were saying like, oh, you got to pick up Darren Waller. This is why. Guy has 1,001 yards and 3 touchdowns for a Raiders offense that exploded in the middle part of the season here. A 14-point average out of the tight end position, which is another position that doesn't traditionally score a lot of points consistently. So if you were able to get Waller, who averages 14 points a game, which is about as much as Zach Ertz and Austin Hooper at this time, Darren Waller was a godsend for a lot of people because tight end is a position where you can sneak in a lot of points, where you can kind of sneak up on your opponent and really take them down without them ever really realizing that they're in trouble. Our second guy is also like that, but a lot of people drafted him. That's Mark Andrews of the Baltimore Ravens. He has 759 yards and 8 touchdowns for a 12.9 average. This one was really interesting because Baltimore has so many tight ends. No one really knew who was going to get the lion's share of these carries until a lot of reports came out in camp saying it was going to be Andrews. And then it's like, oh, they have Marquise Brown, they have Mark Ingram, they have Gus Edwards, they have all of these pieces, Willie Snead. Mark Andrews isn't going to get the ball. He's Lamar Jackson's favorite target. Like, Lamar Jackson, I feel like, throws the ball to Mark Andrews more than anybody else. That's not fact-checked. It might be wrong, but still. Mark Andrews pulled through for a lot of people because he had a couple multi-touchdown games that also really put people over the edge. Kind of like in a way that Kenyon Drake did once he got traded to the Cardinals. These guys with these premium positions can have a boom game like Marvin Jones has every once in a while, and it really benefits the people. He's a must start every week still because he still averages 12 points a game, which is more than the average for tight ends. I see this success sustaining for Mark Andrews and for Darren Waller. They're both young, in young systems. Even if Derek Carr gets replaced at quarterback, it's always great to have a good tight end safety valve, especially in a West Coast style offense. If you have them in keeper leagues, keep them. Draft them in the mid rounds next year. Make sure if 4 or 5 tight ends have gone off the board and they're still there, you grab them quickly in your drafts next year. And our final player is not even a player. It's a culmination of players, and that is the New England Patriots defense, averaging 15.5 points a game as a defense. What? I know some people who don't even draft defenses at all. They just kind of play them week to week waiver wire. Man, if you scored the New England defense, you got a great player. You got a free 10 points every single week. I know a lot of people play with their defense like, oh, I hope this doesn't screw me. With New England, it's like they could win you your game every single week. They were scoring touchdowns almost every other single week. They have the best corner in the game right now in Stephon Gilmore on their side. They might not get a ton of sacks, but they don't give up a crap ton of points. And they get a lot of turnovers because people have to throw against them or feel the need to throw against them, even though New England's offense has not been performing very well. New England is in the position they're in right now as a team because of their defense. It's very hard to draft defenses too because you have to do it based on matchups week over week over week over week over week. So let's take Kansas City's defense, for example. Last week had a great week against the Broncos, and it was also snowing, which probably really helped. Minnesota, out of nowhere, had a great game against the Chargers, who killed the Jaguars, who also have a good defense. It's so hard to predict defenses, but to have one that you can start every single week without fail is so valuable to have on a fantasy team. So if you have the New England Patriots defense, you found a diamond in the rough and probably a one-way ticket to the playoffs. And thank you so much for tuning in to this week's video. Let me know if I missed any fantasy surprises, or let me know the players who really helped your fantasy season or even hurt your fantasy season. I don't like to do super negative videos like that. I know we did it a little bit in the report card video back in week 10, but I like to stay with the positive here, keep the positive vibes flowing. So let me know your thoughts on fantasy just in general down below. Give me some players you're targeting for next season as well. Be sure to subscribe and comment on other videos as well, and even to view those other videos so you can see how we've progressed throughout the year. We're almost at the end of the year, one more video, and we're at the end of the regular season. We're going to be doing game pick videos for the playoffs as well, so stay tuned for those. Thank you so much for watching. Enjoy your holiday season, your Christmas, your Hanukkah, your Kwanzaa, anything that you happen to celebrate, and we will see you all next week for the conclusion of the 2019 regular season. Thank you so much, everybody. I really appreciate it.